Ms Broad.
Thank you, Acting President. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak about this Local Jobs First Amendment Bill 2025, and what we see with this bill is new powers, further bureaucracy and fines for business. Now, the Commissioner currently has limited ability to penalise suppliers for non-compliance with the Commissioner's information gathering powers, but this bill introduces a civil penalty mechanism to enable the Commissioner to apply to court for a civil penalty order in relation to a supplier's non-compliance notice. So, the bill proposes a maximum penalty of 100 penalty units, so that and also 500 penalty units for an organisation. So that's approximately $20,000 fine and $100,000 fine respectively. So it is quite extraordinary what we're seeing in this bill. So the bill introduces new powers and functions for the Commissioner, including additional investigation and reporting powers, a new power to conduct site inspections with notice, and an explicit role to provide advice and support to contracting parties. Now, the bill gives the Commissioner an explicit function to conduct investigations and the ability to receive and investigate complaints. Now, we have, and Mr Welsh, I do thank you for your explanation of the concerns that we have with this bill, the potential financial impact on Victorian businesses, particularly smaller operators in regional and rural areas, so that the penalty schemes could unfairly penalise businesses who are unable to meet the local content requirements due to industry circumstances beyond their control. And a further concern that's been highlighted in this debate is what is the cost? What is the cost of administering this scheme and these extra powers? Because it does stand to reason that the increased auditing, compliance and enforcement activities would require greater resources for the Office of the Local Jobs First Commissioner, particularly in terms of a headcount. And Labor has refused to acknowledge this fact or provide any modelling around what these measures will cost and that cost to implement, and that is of a concern. So, what is life like for business under an Allan Labor government? Well, I can tell you, as I talk to people, it's clear that it is pretty tough. Now, Business Council of Australia, they found high property taxes and other red tape. Their survey has once again confirmed that the Allan Labor government, under them, Victoria is the worst place in Australia to start, operate and grow a business. Now, they did a survey and it marked Victoria last for overall business settings and found, with a low ranking for its property taxes and charges, payroll taxes and business licensing requirements, the state has much room for improvement if it is to attract and generate business-driven growth. Now, across specific areas impacting business conditions, the survey ranked Victoria very poorly for overall taxation, regulatory costs and trading regulations, and Victoria's property tax settings found to be the least competitive nationally. They also rated poorly for overall licensing, administrative burden and compliance, and this is certainly what we're seeing in this bill. Victoria rated very poorly for the cost of workers' compensation schemes, with premiums above the national average, and also poorly for planning and building permitting systems. Now, I know that my colleague, my Nationals colleague, Annabelle Cleland, has raised concerns about the closures that we're seeing, particularly in her electorate. There's been, very large businesses closing, and that's seen hundreds of job losses in the region. And it's putting incredible pressure on towns, and I'm seeing that right across the electorate. But Victoria has recorded a staggering 48% increase in business insolvencies in the last financial year alone. That is incredible. More than 4,200 Victorian businesses closed in the last year. Now, local manufacturers, farmers, service providers and retailers, they're being pushed to the brink by skyrocketing energy bills, unaffordable insurance, out-of-control work cover premiums, layers of red tape and a very punishing tax burden. And we certainly know why. Because when you look at the state debt, the net state debt in Victoria, it's astounding. We are heading towards $194 billion, and that is nearly $29 million every single day in interest. Now, after a decade of financial mismanagement, we see Labor continue to increase taxes, just taxing and taxing, ever-increasing taxing, pushing businesses, investment and economic opportunities interstate. I was speaking to people just recently who live on the border, and they were talking about the number of housing developments that are moving into the other state because people are trying to avoid the incredible burden of tax that we now face in Victoria. I know the Herald Sun did an editorial this year, and they reported that Victoria is actually the high taxing state. Now, the Premier has acknowledged that Victoria relies heavily on payroll and property for our property taxes, for our primary taxation sources, but these are taxes on productivity and investment. Now, stamp duty accounts for about $10 billion of our state revenue. Land taxes account for about $9.8 billion of revenue. Now, the Herald Sun highlighted in that editorial about increasing property taxes means more tax revenue. So when I thought about it, I thought, well, we shouldn't be shocked when the state government continue to add costs and raise bar for property owners because with there more regulations and requirements, because that is seeing people forced to sell their homes. And when they're forced to sell their homes, it means a lot of properties are sold. And if a property is bought, then you're paying stamp duty. And stamp duty is money in the government coffers. So it's in their interest for people to lose their homes because that's, in a way, how they make money. Now, I've spoken to a developer recently who talked about the lack of building and the lack of investment happening. Also with councils, we've spoken to them recently, and they talked about the burden of taxes impacting regional Victoria. And this burden is seeing thousands of homes going elsewhere. But if the government is concerned about local jobs, then they would be looking at the costs on business, not just with the taxes that I've been talking about, but also with the energy costs. Now, we're seeing a huge escalation in the costs, and I know just V&I West, we had the report recently from AEMO that talked about a huge increase in the cost of that transmission line. And again, that is all going to appear on our energy bills. So the upper limits of that is more like $11 billion, so far higher than the $3.6 billion, I think it was, that they estimated early on. Now, another impact that we're seeing on local jobs is work cover, premium increases, despite no claims. I've spoken to businesses that have really had that hit home. And just to give you some figures, in Seymour, Annabelle Cleland raised concerns about a concreting business. Their work cover had doubled from $6,000 to $13,000 in 3 years, despite no claims or incidents. And then Tim Bull, who's in another part of the state, not in northern Victoria, but he's talked about the impact on some fishing operators and their industry. Their bill in 2022-23 was $4,178. In 25-26, it's now $24,078. So that's despite a reduction in marine safety concerns and in the fishing sector. So this is a huge issue and a huge burden on so many businesses in Victoria. So if the government is concerned about local jobs, then perhaps instead of looking for other ways to find business and make more revenue, they could look at ways of reducing costs on business. Because the Allen Labor government should be taking action to cut red tape and incentivise investment to ensure Australia is an attractive place to do business. If you care about local jobs, if you care about providing opportunities for apprentices, for regional businesses, for tradespeople, then stop wasting money, stop introducing new taxes that are crushing our state, crushing businesses and crushing jobs.